Okay, so hi again, everyone, and welcome to this second module of our course on democracy and adult education. As I was saying before, this course is part of the FuturelabAE project and introduces the concept of change-oriented adult education and the role it can play to further democracy and foster inclusion in our society. So this course is led by the EPA-TV, Escola Profissional Amar Terra Verde, that I represent today also with my colleague, Rosa Ferreira, who is near me. We are the Portuguese partner of this project, and my name is Francisca Borges. I am a Portuguese and French teacher, and I am also an adult education trainer, and I will be your host today. Let me talk a little about our school. So, Escola Profissional Amar Terra Verde is in the north of Portugal. It's a vet school, a training provider, and we have since 2006 a lifelong learning and an adult education unit specialized in upskilling the qualifications of the adult population. My colleague in this project, Rosa Ferreira, is the coordinator of the Qualifica Center. The topic of today's session is insights on change-oriented education and democracy. So before starting, I would like to let you know that our session is being recorded, and it will be great if you could also share with us your name and perhaps the organization you represent. And for that, please use the chat and send it to the panelists and all attendees in order that we all can see it. And you also can use the chat to share your comments if you want during the presentations. So Rosa is going to say hello in the chat in order all can see it. And please do the same thing. And during the session, if you'd like to ask any question to our speakers, please do so. Write your question using the Q&A so that we can share them at the end, and our guest speakers will have some time to answer those questions. And before giving the floor to our first speaker, let me present her very quickly. Mónica Rocha Melo works at the International Relations Department of IPAV, Instituto Padre António Vieira, assisting in the internationalization of the Ubuntu methodology since 2016. She has a BSc in International Relations from the Technical University of Lisbon and a diploma in Education and Development from the University of London. Throughout her career, she has worked in large international organizations, namely at the UNHCR, running an education program with the Vietnamese boat people in Hong Kong detention centers, and with non-governmental organizations for development in São Tomé e Príncipe, Macau, and New Zealand. So Mónica, now I give you the floor.
Well, good afternoon, Francisca. Good afternoon, everyone. And what an honor and a privilege it is for me, representing IPAV, and personally to be here. So thank you again, Francisca, for thinking of us at the Ubuntu Leaders Academy and for giving us this opportunity for us to share what really has, in a way, changed our lives. As you were describing, my professional career basically occurred in Hong Kong and in the Far East, and I've been back to Europe 4 years ago, and I got extremely lucky to have been invited by IPAV to be part of the internationalization of the concept of Ubuntu. It's been a life changer for me. So the way Rita and I have organized this session is that I will explain to you what the word Ubuntu, which many of you may not be familiar with, is. And for that, we're going to be using the words of the Ubuntu's biggest proponent in the 20th and 21st century, Desmond Tutu. Rita will be showing you in a few moments. And then I will give you also a slight introduction to what we do as the Ubuntu Leaders Academy that started in Portugal and now is present in 15 countries around the world. After I finish explaining to you what we do, then Rita, she was a trainee at our organization, will give a personal testimony of what the training and how it impacted her life. And then after that, we hope there will be loads of questions from you. We'll be happy to answer. And we have also other activities thought out through. So Rita, Rita and I, we work for an organization called EPAV, and the acronym, actually, EPAV, is of a philosopher of the 17th century. His name was Antonio Vieira. He was a philosopher and a Jesuit priest, and a fighter for that always worked countercurrent to the people of his time. He was fighting for people's dignity. He was, and in very concrete terms, helping people of his time to understand that they could not enslave other human beings. So he fought against slavery very hard, with terrible consequences for his life. So we're very honored to take Antonio Vieira, Padre Antonio Vieira, as the name and the leader of our organization. Now, within EPAV, we run different projects. As I said, we're going to today hear about one called the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. And now let's look at the word Ubuntu first. So Rita, if you could help me get Desmond Tutu to our setting here today. It's a 3-minute video only. Let's listen to Desmond Tutu.
The profound truth is you cannot be human on your own. You are human through relationship. You become human, you know, and we've seen it. Teachers of psychology tell us that we wouldn't be able to speak as human beings. We speak by imitating other human beings. We walk as human beings by imitating other human beings. We think. And so ultimately, yes, we are human only through relationship. And that is fantastic, because it says we are really made for this delicate network of interdependence, so that the completely self-sufficient person is in fact subhuman. I need you in order for me to be me. I need you to be you to the fullest. We are made for complementarity. Adam had certain gifts, Eve had certain gifts, but it was only when the two made up what was lacking in the other that they became fully human. And that is the fundamental law of our being. Ubuntu says, not you are human because you think. You are human because you participate in relationship. It says a person is a person through other persons. That is what we say, but that is what the Bible is saying, and that is what our human experience teaches us.
Sorry, I'm activating. So Desmond Tutu says it way better than I could ever say. That's how the Ubuntu Leaders Academy has become a venue where we run programs that are, in a way, different from your mainstream education programs, and we can then hope to have an impact in our times, basically reminding people that I am because you are. So in simple terms, if I win, you win. If I lose, you lose. Instead of teaching towards independence, the Ubuntu Leaders Academy reminds people of the human essence. It's an African legacy that we've been taking to different continents around the world, and I'll explain you very briefly about the Ubuntu global network that has been developing since 2016. But prior to 2016, back in 2010, and Rita, if you could show the first slide of our presentation, the Ubuntu Leaders Academy started in Portugal. First, we were in Lisbon, then we moved on to Porto, and then we moved on to the world. We are now all over Portugal. We've developed a protocol with our Ministry for Education, and we have now the Ubuntu Leaders Academy non-formal education methodology is being implemented in 55 school groupings in Portugal. That means around about 100 schools. And the feedback we've been receiving has been encouraging us to continue working at a project that we completely and absolutely believe in and love. So as the slide shows, and it's in very small letters, so I'm going to quickly just run through it. So basically, we have devised since 2010 a non-formal education philosophy based on this Ubuntu idea, I am because you are. I can only be a person through other people. And we target young people from age 18 to 35. Although in schools now, we are working with kids that are at the very last years of high school. So people aged between 16 and 18 at the core difficult years of adolescence, and where this program and this very simple philosophical notion has had a very strong impact. So basically, what do we do? What's our main goal? We empower people for three main, what we call three main axes. Servant leadership. It almost sounds like a paradox, yeah? How can you be a servant and a leader? You can. Then the other one is ethics of care. I care for myself, I care for others, care for you, for others, and I care for the planet. And the third one is building bridges. Instead of being in our own silos and compartments, no, we build bridges with other human beings from our culture, our neighborhood, and from the world. Because we are all, in essence, the same. We're all human, as Desmond Tutu just reminded us. I've given you these three main axes, so servant leadership, ethics of care, and building bridges. These are our three main core objectives. And during our training and workshops with our trainees, our goal is in all the activities that we do, and as I said, they're all non-formal education. All of the activities we do touch on 5 main pillars, talking about self-knowledge, self-confidence. So if I know myself, I will be able to understand my skills and the areas where I lack skills in. Therefore, I work towards them, so I become more confident. Then the third one is resilience. Don't quit. Life throws us a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things happening in our lives. Through our Ubuntu training, we remind our trainees that resilience is part of us humans, and we need to develop that in our lives. Then the fourth pillar is so important. It's called empathy. Looking at things from other people's perspective. You stepping on other people's shoes and see reality from his or her side, and then see how we can compromise. And then these 4 pillars together, they consolidate into one, which is fundamental, I think, to change the world, which is service, the so-called servant leadership, which Rita will then explaining what the impact it had on her life. She's going to give you a very insightful way of looking at it. Now, as I said, this training is for people 18 to 35. We've also been asked by university professors and trainers, older people, who would like us also to provide them training, and we've done so. And so our age group has beautifully expanded, and we now cater for a lot of different age groups. Our training formats go from 1 day to 3 days to 1 week. Normally, the one we use internationally is what we call the Ubuntu week, where we start by training local trainers to on servant leadership, leading like Mandela, like Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela is one of the big prominent figures of Ubuntu. Ubuntu, which was a philosophy, an African philosophy rooted in Africa, but Africa itself had sort of forgotten. And when Nelson Mandela gets out of prison and releases himself from prison, and like President Obama also said, he not only released himself, but he released the person who had held him prisoner, and he created the Rainbow Nation. He embodies this notion of Ubuntu. Then we also have these beautiful analogies on real bridges, real physical bridges, and us as humans building bridges with people around us, and developing in our trainees this skill capacity to build bridges with people from other cultures, which, as you may all agree, I'm sure you do agree with me, our world badly needs these times, these confusing times. Let's build bridges instead of erecting walls. Then resilience. Look, have we ever been, I mean, I'm sure we've been throughout history through a lot of difficult periods, but we're now also facing one. So resilience is a very important skill that we do share ideas and try to strengthen in the trainees, this capacity to look at adversity as an opportunity and not be defeatist and victimized. On the contrary, we are not what happens to us, we are how we react to what happens to us. And also, and Rita is going to tell you way better than I can, is a very powerful methodology, non-formal methodology, which is called Ubuntu lives. Each life matters, and each life story matters. So your story and what happens to you, when I hear you, it may help me change mine and may help me understand that I'm not alone in whatever I thought I was alone prior to listening to your story. And then this idea of servant leadership, service, servant leadership, where I don't look just at my pocket and at myself, but I look at the interests of my community. And I try in what I do, impact my community in such a way, because if I impact them positively, I receive positiveness back. So I am because you are. So whatever I do and how I serve impacts me as well, impacts the others and impacts me. So Rita, could you please move to the other slide? So, and the other one. Okay, so a little bit more on the ethics of care. Care, attention to the planet. Care, attention to myself. Care and attention to the others. Rita, the other one. So now on servant leadership. A true servant leader is the one who can lead his team or her team, maximizing the potential of each member of the group towards a common goal. Imagine the metaphor we use a lot is like an orchestra. You have the conductor, maximizing every single instrument to create a beautiful piece of music. And being a servant leader is someone with that capacity, and that's not easy, but it's possible to train in people, and that's what we try doing at the Academy. The other one, Rita, and then I'll pass on the microphone to you. Building bridges. As I said before, we do have non-formal ways of approaching this, but thinking of ourselves as bridge builders. You know, a bridge has a place where it has to be found in order to be built. a real physical bridge. You need to find a spot in where to build a bridge. And you need also to make sure that the margins of the bridge are not in one way, they are two-way. You know, there's two ways of crossing the bridge, in and out. And also a bridge needs to be maintained, otherwise it falls, like everything in life. So how can we as human beings ensure that we are, in our actions, in the way we are in the world, whatever we do, build bridge builders, or pontifex, like we say with the old Roman word. The person in Roman cities that was one of the most important persons of the city was the one who held the keys to the bridge in the cities. So being a bridge builder is no joke. It's actually a very, very important skill to acquire in the times we live now, where we have leaders who completely fill our news screens talking about erecting walls as solutions to problems, when we know that is a fallacy. So building bridges is actually another of our skills that we train. Now, quickly, I'm just going to tell you something and share something that is close to my heart. Back in 2016, and with the influence of Professor John Volmink. Professor John Volmink is a renowned professor in South Africa, and he is the essence of, or the person that embodies the Ubuntu philosophy at our IPAV and our Leaders Academy in Portugal. He's the president of the Ubuntu Global Network. Now, when we started doing the Ubuntu Leaders training in Portugal back in 2010, some of our trainees were from different countries. So the very first academy started back in 2016 in Guinea-Bissau. And I'm very, very happy to give if I'm a bit actually proud, to let you know that now 4 years have gone by and we are now in 15 countries and waiting for COVID-19 to be controlled for us to actually travel again with the new world that is now emerging. And we are going to answer the requests of other people that have asked us to have this Ubuntu training, which can be encapsulated with the idea values-driven leadership to their countries. So since 2016 to now, we have run Ubuntu Leaders Academy with people, non-governmental organizations, people working from municipalities, young people from different youth organizations in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa, in some African countries, and in Europe. Not many in Europe. We are actually, this year, we're focusing more in Europe, where I think we really need to relearn how to build bridges again. With COVID, again, like everybody else, we got in and we started working from home remotely from our computers, but then life gave us an opportunity. With Zoom, we understood that we could reach a lot of people. And on May 16, we did, together with the following the United Nations initiative, we did the Day of Living Together in Peace. And on July 18, as it is our common habit, we celebrated Nelson Mandela's birthday. And in that day, we had the enormous privilege to have had 3 Nobel Peace Prizes addressing our Ubuntu global community, which now is comprised of around 10,000 people and growing. And for us, and for me, doing and having a life that has a relevant, a life of significance is important. And so the work that we do here, reminding people of their essence and training for servant leadership, for defending what's most important right now, which is the common good of humanity. We all have to work together, as a lot of leaders have reminded us of late, and with COVID-19 telling us that if we don't stick together, it's going to be impossible actually to overcome the disease, then I believe that a life of significance and a good team spirit is what we have at IPAV and at the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. In our way, we're trying to follow on the footsteps of the person who founded of the name in which we base our actions, the philosopher from the 17th century, who also fought against a lot of issues of his time and acted as countercurrent to his time's way of being. And now I'll be in silence and I'll pass on the microphone to Rita. You're going to be listening to a beautiful testimony of looking at our organization, but this time from a trainee's perspective. Rita, on to you, and thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mónica. Building bridges is sometimes very difficult, but it's a great philosophy. It can be face-to-face, it can be virtually, but I think it's a great philosophy. It can join us, it can keep us together, and I think it's the best way to see life, being together. Thank you so much, Mónica, for this great presentation. And now, before giving the floor to Rita, I'm going just to present her very quickly. So sorry, I'm going to read her presentation. Rita is a 25-year-old girl from the north of Portugal with a BSc in management from the University of Porto, seeking to make a difference in the world. She welcomed Ubuntu Leaders Academy in her life while volunteering with refugees in the Greek Lesbos island in early 2018. Later, she was a participant of the 5th edition of the Academy, and since then has worked at IPAV, organizing the 6th edition of the Academy and Ubuntu Weeks in educational institutions. Something that I want to refer here is that Rita, at the end of her presentation, she wrote, "We are all Ubuntu. We just have to rediscover ourselves through a new lens to realize that." So, Rita, I give you the floor.
Well, thank you very much, not only for your presentation, but also for Monica's presentation that really, truly explained the essence of Ubuntu. And I'm so excited to have this challenge and to share my testimony, as it made me really go back in time, and it made me very nostalgic. But it is an honor to share this with you, and I have to begin by thanking you for having the availability to embrace my story and try to understand Ubuntu better through my testimony. So I'll be sharing just my screen that I have. Can you see it? So great. So I'm a bit nervous, I'll confess. So if my voice just shakes a bit, you know, but I'm good. I wanted to start by showing my T-shirt, and Mónica has one that looks exactly the same. This is what we call the Ubuntu T-shirt, and as a participant, everyone has one. And I don't know if you can see very well, but it says 466 /64. So it represents the number of the Mandela in prison. So he was the 466th prisoner of the year 64. Sorry. So this is a very important symbol for us to carry, and once we put on this T-shirt, we truly assume the role of being Ubuntu and feel the power and all the history that this number carries, as it's related to Nelson Mandela, that he's one of our one of the leaders that we take in very high consideration. So I'll begin then telling my story. So as let's do this. Okay, great. So as Francisca was saying when she presented me, when I first heard of Ubuntu, I was in Greece volunteering at a refugee camp in the island of Lesbos. And one of the girls of our team had just been a participant of the 4th edition of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy in Portugal. So she explained to us the concepts and some of the exercises. And right away it sparked something within me and I applied to participate in the 5th edition of the Academy once I got back to Portugal. This was an incredible experience, as you can see by the photos, but when I got back to Portugal, I was not in a very good shape. And somehow I felt that the Academy could help me organize my head and make peace with the turbulent present and past. And I thought I could find my purpose and better understand what I could do with my life. So here are some of the things I've learned and I'm still learning with the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. It was in one of the seminars that I got to know the ancient Japanese tradition of putting broken objects back together using gold, as if to make imperfections more valuable. I hate being judgmental, but I quickly jump to conclusions about myself when I make a mistake, and it doesn't have to be a big one. I always believed that in being kind towards others, and I realized I wasn't being kind to myself. I truly believed that I had to do better than what I was, that was never enough. And even though my friends can make a list of accomplishments to refute it, I wanted to be a perfect human being, as if these concepts of humanity and perfection were compatible. And I'm still learning to accept that being human means being wronged and making mistakes, and a lot of them. But I can now understand that the weight of my own expectations about myself was restricting my growth. I'm also still learning to forgive and to heal these wounds. I thought I only had to forgive those who did me wrong or hurt me in such a profound way that they shaped the person I am today. And it is going to take me a very long time to learn to forgive myself first, to embrace my imperfections and paint them gold and heal and shine through these golden cracks. As a participant of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy, as I said, I was not in a very happy place. I was dealing with depression, but I always kept a wide smile on my face. Kind of made it my trademark. I was hardened by previous experiences. As I sought not to become a better person, I found that my smile was my biggest weapon against the very deep pain that I was feeling. That became my poker face. I didn't feel comfortable showing others I wasn't okay, especially because I didn't like the person that I was when I was not okay. And I didn't feel like myself, and therefore I didn't want others to know me like that. If you haven't heard of the Butterfly Circus, a short film, I recommend you to watch it. It's one of the most fundamental exercises of the Academy and leads us to deconstruct the metaphor that we are as butterflies. We need time in our cocoon to process what happens to us, to give meaning to the pain, so that we can grow and transform into more loving, hopeful, and truly happy people. And this is something we go through over and over in our lives. At this time, I was very frustrated that all my techniques, all the things I had done before, hadn't worked to make me feel happy. This is how I understood that I didn't have to be okay all the time, that I needed to embrace what was happening inside to evolve from it. So I began to allow myself to show my emotions with no judgment. And yes, I was crying all the time, and everyone knew I was the person that couldn't hold back the tears. And I began to feel more comfortable. And within the year of the Academy, I felt that there I could be myself, and that people liked me for that, and that I liked myself for that. I felt genuine, and it was very heartwarming to see that people felt that too. The final event of the Academy, as Mónica referred, is Ubuntu Lives, where participants share their stories, their life stories, and I chose to share mine. Being called on stage, each one of us was introduced by people that have made the journey with us as trainers, and it did so by choosing a color. I have to say, I thought I was going to be very disappointed with the color they had chosen for me. I didn't think I was calm like blue, or energetic like orange, or fierce as red. Instead, I felt I was white. White because I felt I allowed myself to be transparent, to feel everything from calm to passion. I was always in tears and smiling. So I was called on stage. They said the choice of color was consensual. Rita is white, for she is so genuine, they said. It is sometimes so hard to be ourselves, and we always say it takes courage. Ubuntu taught me that it also takes love and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, as there is immense force in it. Okay. I've always struggled with relationships throughout my life. It's been a constant thing since I was a little girl. I was never the popular girl. I was more the geek one with the glasses and everything. And my group of friends have been always very small. So it was to my complete surprise that I found out I was actually a people person. Once I felt like myself and got the weight of all the judgments off my shoulders, it felt easy to connect with people, to befriend, to share intimate stories. This also made me very eager to learn from others. I love hearing other people's stories and drinking from their humanity and feeling more human myself and less robotic. Well, since this is a leadership academy, it makes only sense that I also have learned how to develop as a leader. And this was the result of all the growth I've already mentioned. So far, at the point that I was a participant, I had assumed leadership roles, especially at university. Some are great, some not so much. But of course, I couldn't be a great leader if I had so many unresolved things within. I see myself as a dreamer. I always say it. I dream of a better world, and I'm crazy enough to think that I can actually leave a mark. For this to happen, I have to act. I have to lead. Therefore, I was open to get to know myself better. Showing here in my presentation shows very well what it's like to change the world. Many want change, but very few will understand that change begins with oneself. The first lesson is the role of those in power is not to rule, but to serve. This didn't make a lot of sense at first sight, servant leadership. But I believe I understood it better when I heard John Volming talk about service. He said, we have to love those we serve, or else we'll end up using them and dismissing them. And we can also say, we have to love those we lead, or else we'll end up using them and dismissing them. My role as a leader is not to impose what I think is correct, but rather satisfy the necessities of those I am responsible for. I understood this even better in an exercise that left me crying for hours. The memory of it still makes my belly hurt. So the exercise is like this. We were given randomly a paper with a role we had to play. So embodying that character, we had to take steps forward if the answer to a certain question was yes, or stay in the same place if the answer was no. And some examples of the questions were, I have never been discriminated based on the color of my skin, or I have never struggled financially. I have had the opportunity to study. Without looking around, I kept taking steps forward. And it was only when the exercise was over that I looked back. And some people hadn't taken a single step. The majority of them actually were very far away from me. And I was their prime minister. It was a role play, but this one hit really hard. I felt responsible for all those people. They were my people. As their leader, I am supposed to help them take steps. do everything I can to have them closer to me. I felt like I had failed, and from that moment on, I never forgot what it means to lead. For a very long time, I adopted an individualistic posture, and I think I can say my life motto was at some point, if you want it done well, just do it yourself. Only now I understand that this posture was not only the result of my dysfunctional family, but also of the self-centered, selfish, and materialistic society that promotes individual success as the key to happiness. And we all know this mindset leads to competition and sabotaging. I'm very happy to have changed my perspective entirely, and I believe with every force of my being that we need a change of paradigm. We need one that promotes cooperation, empathy, compassion, love, self-loving, love for one another as key ingredients for prosperity. So the ingredient to build a world that is more just, that celebrates and learns from differences, one that does not have a single definition for success, nor does recognize only one path to reach this success. Being self-centered is nothing more than the result of fear. The same fear that leads us to look around and see other people as competitors, that leads us to build walls. So distrust, ignore the collective, and only see our belly. I've always held education in the highest of considerations in my life, and I saw it as a means to have as many doors open as possible for my future. That's why I've always been a dedicated student and had always great grades. Despite this mindset, once I got my degree in management, I was not spared a big disillusion. I understood that being a great student did not dictate a steady and bright future, nor did it dictate I would have greater chances of being happy. In fact, I was sad and depressed and devastated. I guess I needed to start looking at education with a more open mind and a wider perspective. And I now understand education has to have to do with also with learning to manage our emotions, learning to how to get in someone's shoes, finding out our value is defined by who we are rather than what we do or create. This is why I see Ubuntu as a new educational paradigm. John Bombing, that you'll get to know better in a short while, struck a chord in me when he said that school is a place where everyone knows a lot of things, but no one is learning. Learning goes beyond memorizing topics. It has to do with understanding, with experimentation and creativity. And wouldn't we be richer if we embraced two different solutions to a problem created by two different minds? And wouldn't we be richer if we didn't assume that the status quo is the best and that instigated young minds to propose other options? The world becomes poorer as minds become more narrow and people become one-sided and critical. I quoted myself here. Hope you don't take that the wrong way. But I truly believe this. The world becomes poorer as minds become more narrow and people become one-sided and critical. So the world changes. The universe stretches as it's being pushed and pulled in different directions. It's like Play-Doh, you know? The world will become a better place if we embrace difference, if we encourage critical thinking, and see the beauty in each and everyone. I find myself today being around people and regarding them as beautiful, not for the looks, but for their thoughts, for caring, for asking me if I'm okay, or teaching me. That's how I've learned that when you give a part of yourself to another, you are not left with less, but with more. I think this pretty much sums up the magic of Ubuntu. So it teaches us how to give ourselves to one another through servant leadership. And in this act of giving, actually you receive more, you create more, you love more. So the more love, the more smiles, the more empathy, and there's more hope. And aren't we so desperately in need of hope? So we are more human because we see others as humans with life by enlightening others. And this light adds up. It doesn't overshadow the existing light. Ubuntu is an equation of sums, of multiplication, and love to the exponential. So let us share this magic. Let us create a new paradigm.
Thank you so much, Rita.
I believe that we still have John Volming to explain a bit his vision about this new paradigm that aligns with what I just said. Is that okay if we play that video?
Okay, so Rita, are you going to share a video? Okay, thank you.
Yes, can I do that?
Yeah, okay.
Here's the wise John Volming that Mónica has mentioned and that I mentioned as well. He's an inspiration, right? Every time I hear him, I feel really inspired and recentered, as he's so pragmatic. And he embodies Ubuntu in every aspect of his life. So he's a teacher, so he's in the best place to tell us how Ubuntu can be a new educational paradigm. So I'll share his video. Give me just a second here. It's here. That is here, John Volming.
The question we have asked ourselves in this country: what kind of people do we want to see coming out of our school system as the citizens of a transformed and admirable society? And what kind of teacher and curriculum and educational ethos will be needed in order to produce such people? So we've tried to answer this question in various ways, and in our curriculum it says, we hope that our efforts would lead to, quote, learners who are literate, numerate, and multi-skilled, but who are also confident and independent and compassionate, environmentally respectful, and able to participate in society as critical and active citizens, end quote. The question is, however, have schools really lived up to these expectations? In our country, there is a widespread agreement that it has not been the case. And worldwide, there is broad consensus that schools have never really come close to fulfilling this mandate. Schools have failed society, it is generally believed. Schools have failed society and students in the sense that it has not prepared students conceptually or emotionally to play a meaningful role in modern society, or to be prepared for the workplace, or the development of the values to function in a responsible and humane way within society. It's been argued by many that what schools actually do and have been doing for a very long time, maybe hundreds, more than 100 years, is to reproduce institutionalized cultural consensus that denies other personal and societal goals. Whether or not that is true, I would still like to believe that education in the 21st century cannot just be about acquiring narrowly defined basic skills, but it is an engagement with the world, a widening of your horizons. It is, education is about growth, about discovery, about a quest for understanding and a quest for meaning. This quest goes far beyond limited horizons of conventional curricula and textbooks and standardized exams. It is a concern with life experience and making the world a better place for all. Education is a change in the meaning of human experience. Unfortunately, schools often just restrict themselves as to what they believe is their main task, which is certifying technical competence. The question we have to ask today is whether we have reached a fork in the road where we have to decide, as far as education is concerned, we have to decide whether we want to continue to produce people driven by self-interest, continuing to work separately, and making the realization of the dream of living together as one global community, making that dream very difficult to attain. If we continue on the road that we are, we will never attain that dream. With this in mind, and certainly this mindset of separatism, we must agree that this places severe limitations on our ability to deal with chronic crises such as climate change, epidemics, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, and many other health as well as economic issues. Do we want to continue in such a world while the world remains a place of uncertainty, complexity, and volatility? Now, there may be many features of an Ubuntu school, and I'll just mention a few. But when you talk about an Ubuntu paradigm, it finds expression in Ubuntu schools. We should learn at school, firstly, that the world that understands and respects Ubuntu is one in which differences are celebrated as good news, that differences are seen as opportunity for learning, that we're not scared of. Ubuntu helps us to understand that we live in a delicate web of connectedness with each other. I am because we are. A sense of community, a sense of family is essential in this world. A world such as ours, where we grew up on a steady diet of myths and unquestioned assumptions about each other. The time has come where we have to challenge our beliefs, because many of us believe that, and we assume that the divisions between groups of people based on race, based on origin, language, occupation, gender, religion, orientation, nationality are more real and more enduring than our common humanity. Now, Ubuntu encourages a global perspective. It celebrates what is distinctively human in all cultures and helps us to recognize that group rivalries and unhealthy national competition can, in this age, only lead to total destruction. It is through diversity that we express our ultimate humanity. An Ubuntu school is a school where we should learn how to interrogate those assumptions that we hold so dearly. And when we honestly interrogate ourselves and we cannot defend it, then we should allow those assumptions to be washed away in a sea of anomalies. We should learn at school, and in Ubuntu school, that we are not in the world simply to adapt to the world, but also to act on that world and to change the world for the better. In other words, there is no ready-made world into which we are born. We can participate in creating our own world and give meaning to it. An Ubuntu school is one that can learn in the same way that individuals learn, and understands that the world is changing dramatically and schools need to change as well. It seems an obvious point to make, but it is so often the case that schools, rather than being learning organizations, are in fact knowing organizations. The head knows, and the teachers know, and they expect students also to know, but no one is learning. So in conclusion, let me say we have reached a point in our educational history, the history of our schools and of our school systems, where we need to take a very hard look at what we have been doing over the past decades and even centuries, what we've been doing in those schools, and ask ourselves whether the time has come for us to set new priorities.
Okay, thank you, Rita. The video was a little long and the time is running out, so we must just quick the things a little, sorry. But it was a very interesting one. We have here some questions, but I think that we won't have time to answer them. So what we can do, perhaps one, yeah? Do we have time?
Yeah, even more, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we have one question of Derval from the Aontas that asks, can you please share a methodology or activity you use as part of this program? And she adds, it sounds fantastic. So do you have some methodology, some activity that you can share with us, something? I think that Rita already talked about this a little, but do you want to talk about one single activity or methodology that you think is amazing?
Pointing to me. So the best thing about Ubuntu, and that's why I think it works, is because it's very experimental. So you're not just reading theory of a book or something like that. And it may, what we've said here may make a lot of sense, but you can only feel this once you do some of the exercises that we have to do. We do this by watching films and then discussing in group and sharing different viewpoints. We do this by some exercises like games, you know, they're like basic games, and you can have a lot of you can squeeze a lot of juice out of those little games, and how we should cooperate more rather than just compete with people. And so it's very experimental. It always has a reflection time for you after each exercise, and this reflection can be just for yourself or for your team. But it's very practical. You have to keep moving and doing things, and then as you've experienced it, that's how you question how your mind is working and how you can like reprogram it and see things through a new lens. That's what I meant when I said that we are all Ubuntu. We just have to rediscover ourselves through that lens, and sometimes you have to experience, oh God, I was not being Ubuntu during that, and I've already heard so much about it, and I'm still doing some things that are maybe not, that maybe aren't for the common good, are just for myself. And it's through these experiences and games and films that we acknowledge this.
Okay, thank you, Rita. I have another question from Sam of the Aontas. And Mónica, perhaps you can answer this question. Sam wants to know how best to engage with and challenge those in power, politicians, corporations, etc., who depend on and reproduce an anti-Ubuntu world.
Well, can you hear? Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. the question that you pose us is exactly what the Ubuntu leaders at the end of their training, and full of encouragement and full of feeling energized and full of power at the end of the complete Ubuntu training, think to them for themselves. I am going to give you my answer as an Ubuntu trainee. The only way we have to engage people in power, it's not by words, but it's by deeds, you know. Words gone with the wind. It's when I gather from reconnecting to my own human essence, that I am a human being on this planet with responsibilities and with rights as well. When I show that with my life, that I can and do and act on it, do things differently based on my regained understanding of my own humanity, I then start bringing people with me. And I think people in power will only change their perspective when they see that the people they speak to, they're not just the people. They are unique beings empowered with that idea that they can all together make a difference. So in order for me to be strong enough and act in the world, I cannot act on my own, because alone I'm not going to go anywhere. But empowered by my Ubuntu training and my new awareness of my humanity, I can do a lot of things. And when the politicians understand, I think this is my vision, okay? When the politicians understand that the people they're talking to, they're not robots, they're not idiots looking at their stupid smartphones, but they're actually people who have been made aware again of the power that they all have within, and knowing also that by building bridges with other human beings, they can actually create a solid group of thinkers, then things will change. This is my, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but this is very much my philosophy of life.
Thank you, Mónica, for your answer. We have here another question, but perhaps this one could be answered directly to the person who put this question. It's Joanna Rocha, who asked how to be partner with the Ubuntu Academy and receive training at our school. Perhaps I can exchange with you, Mónica, Joanna's email if she allows me, and then you can perhaps answer this question, because time is running out. It's a pity, but I think that we can just end it here. So I want to thank you, Mónica. Thank you, Rita, to be here, to be present today, to share with us this amazing project, this amazing philosophy that I think is so interesting. We had an activity to do, but we have no time, sorry. So just to remember that who wants to, that this session is not the last one. We still have 3 sessions in this module. So please, in 2 weeks, we will have the 3rd one. If someone wants to get a badge, please, you have a little task to complete on our Moodle platform. And if you have any questions to Mónica, to Rita, please, you can share this question with us, with the EAA. No problem. We will transmit them to Mónica or to Rita, and then share the answers. So thank you so much, and have a lovely day. And thank you, Mónica, once more, and Rita, for your presence. It was brilliant. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.